Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Perfect Guy, 2015, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. There's a reason we're drawn to stories about charm turned sinister. It's the fear buried deep beneath all our desires, the idea that love can lie, that a smile can mask something sharp, that the very person we trust with our heart might be the one to shatter it. The Perfect Guy taps into that fear like a slow breath in the dark. At first glance, it's glossy and seductive, the kind of movie that lures you in with candlelit dates and passionate chemistry. But beneath the polished surface is something volatile. And once it begins to crack, everything crumbles, fast. Set against the sleek backdrop of modern Los Angeles, the film introduces us to Leah Vaughn, a successful lobbyist with the kind of life people imagine when they think of control. She has a career, a beautiful home, and a long-term relationship with her boyfriend, Dave. Their life looks perfect, until it isn't. Leah wants commitment. A future. Dave hesitates. And just like that, their carefully built foundation buckles under the weight of opposing dreams. It's a moment we've seen before. The breakup between two people who still love each other, torn not by betrayal but by timing. It feels grounded, real, even a little sad. But this isn't that kind of story. Not really. Because just when Leah begins to heal, just when she begins to imagine moving on, someone new enters her life. Smooth, magnetic, impossibly charming. Carter Duncan. From the moment he steps onto the screen, Carter is everything Dave wasn't. He's attentive, romantic, unapologetically bold. He opens doors, brings flowers, and meets her parents with a smile that makes everyone fall just a little bit in love with him. Leah, still nursing the bruises of her old relationship, is swept up in it. And who wouldn't be? Carter is the kind of man who makes you feel seen, listened to, chosen. Their relationship ignites with a fire that feels almost too good to be true. Because it is. What starts as a fairy tale soon twists into a nightmare. The first red flag is subtle, a moment of jealousy, a spark of anger that flickers across Carter's face and disappears just as quickly. Leah brushes it off. But the second flag? That one is louder. It's a violent outburst in public, terrifying and sudden, revealing the rage that pulses just beneath Carter's polished exterior. It's in that moment that the illusion shatters. Leah tries to pull away. She ends the relationship. But Carter doesn't leave. He doesn't disappear. Instead, he follows. At first it's just chance encounters. A glimpse of him across the street. A text message with no reply. But soon, the lines between coincidence and obsession blur. Carter becomes a shadow in Leah's life, present in ways she can't prove, watching when she thinks she's alone. Her home no longer feels safe. Her routine becomes a trap. And worst of all, no one seems to believe her. Not fully. Because Carter still knows how to smile. Still knows how to play the perfect man when the lights are on. It's here the film shifts gears, from romance to psychological thriller. Leah is no longer the woman in love. She's the woman hunted. And what follows is a slow, heart-pounding descent into paranoia and survival. She turns to the police, to her friends, even to Dave, whose concern grows as he realizes the danger she's in. But the system moves slowly, and Carter is careful. Calculated. He has no criminal record. No visible threat. Just an obsession that refuses to loosen its grip. But Leah isn't helpless. And that's what makes her so compelling. She's not the trope of the helpless victim. She's smart. Resourceful. She learns. She adapts. And as Carter's game escalates, breaking into her house, tampering with her life, gaslighting her at every turn, Leah begins to fight back. Quietly. Strategically. The same traits that made her successful in her professional life become weapons in this twisted battle for freedom. The tension coils tighter with each passing scene. The audience is left constantly on edge, never quite sure when Carter will appear, never knowing if Leah's next move will finally snap the trap shut or trigger something far worse. The pacing is sharp, the performances, especially Sanaa Lathan as Leah and Ealy as Carter, are electric. Ealy, in particular, balances his role with terrifying precision. 1 minute, he's warm and disarming. The next, his stare turns cold, detached. Watching him shift from lover to stalker is one of the film's most disturbing pleasures. And it all builds toward a final act that's as satisfying as it is explosive. By the end, the woman who once sought comfort and security becomes something else entirely. Someone willing to burn everything down to protect what's left. And the perfect guy? He was never real to begin with. Just a mask. A mirror for desire turned into fear. But what makes The Perfect Guy stand out isn't just the plot. It's the way the film plays with perception. The way it asks you to consider how easily charm can disguise danger. How often women are told they're overreacting, exaggerating, imagining threats that are real. It's a film that weaponizes smoothness. That turns love into a lie, and obsession into a force that wears a tailored suit and says all the right things, until he doesn't. And while the story is tightly written, it's the undercurrent of dread, the feeling that safety is just an illusion, that lingers after the credits roll. Because The Perfect Guy is about more than just one woman's nightmare. It's about the fear of being wrong about someone, about letting someone in, and realizing too late, you never really knew him at all. There's a quiet tension in the way Leah Vaughn moves through the opening moments of The Perfect Guy. Everything about her life is polished, ordered, deliberate. She's sharp in every sense, her mind, her voice, her presence. A powerhouse in the world of political strategy, she navigates high-stakes meetings and loaded conversations with elegance and ease. Her home mirrors her life. Clean lines, minimalist chic, everything in its right place. Leah is the kind of woman who has spent years building something solid beneath her feet. And yet, as we watch her smile through dinner parties and meetings, there's something else flickering behind her eyes. A kind of waiting. A question. At her side is Dave, her boyfriend of 2 years. He's steady, familiar, comforting in a way that feels earned. But there's a weariness too, an emotional inertia that Leah begins to feel more acutely as time passes. She wants more. Not just affection, not just comfort, but permanence. A future. A family. Dave listens, but he doesn't hear her the way she wants to be heard. He stalls, hedges, and gently pushes the conversation away whenever it gets too close to commitment. And Leah, for all her success and strength, can feel that wall growing between them. It's not made of anger or betrayal. It's made of disappointment.
The breakup doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence. A resignation that neither of them wants to voice, but both feel pressing in. One night, over dinner, Leah brings up the idea of a future again, and Dave, gentle, loving, and not ready, tells her what she already knows. He's not there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The moment is soft, painful, honest. And by the time Leah is alone again in her spotless house, it's clear that this isn't just the end of a relationship. It's the beginning of an emotional unraveling she hadn't prepared for. But Leah is nothing if not composed. She throws herself back into work, into routine, into long runs and empty nights. And for a while that's enough. She convinces herself she's fine, that she can wait for love to find her again in the way it's meant to. No more guessing, no more settling, just patience. But fate has other plans, and it arrives in the form of Carter Duncan. Their meeting is a spark. It happens at a coffee shop, casual and unassuming. Carter is confident, charming without being pushy. He has the kind of energy that makes the air feel warmer around him, the kind of smile that lingers after he's walked away. Their conversation is playful but anchored, and before Leah even realizes it, she's saying yes to dinner. What's the harm in one date? But one date becomes 2, then 3, then 5, and suddenly, Leah is laughing again. Carter moves quickly, but not recklessly. He sends flowers. He opens doors. He learns her rhythms. There's something intoxicating about how seen Leah feels with him. After years of navigating a relationship that felt like a waiting room, Carter's energy feels like movement. Momentum. He meets her friends and wins them over. He meets her parents and charms them with ease. He says the things she thought men didn't say anymore. That he wants something real. That he's looking for forever. And Leah, guarded, cautious, but aching for something solid, starts to let herself believe. They share passionate nights and slow, intimate mornings. She introduces him to the most sacred spaces in her life. Her home, her fears, her hopes for the future. He listens. He holds her. He says he'll never let her go. And for a moment, it's everything. But then, something changes. It's subtle, like a shift in the weather. A car ride. A glance. A stranger in a gas station asking Leah a question. Innocent enough. Carter sees it differently. His demeanor shifts. The air in the car thickens. And just like that, the charm cracks. He erupts. Not with words, but with violence. A man is dragged from his car. Fists fly. Leah watches, frozen, as the man she trusted to keep her safe becomes a storm she can't stop. The ride home is silent. Carter's apologies come quick and clean. I lost it. He was disrespectful. That's not who I am. He holds her hand. He looks sorry. But something in Leah's chest curls into itself. That image, the rage, the suddenness, it doesn't leave her. She tries to make sense of it. Tries to forgive. But the unease follows her like a second shadow. The perfect man she thought she found now feels unfamiliar. Dangerous. So she ends it. Clearly. Kindly. But firmly. She tells Carter that they're done. That what she saw can't be unseen. But Carter isn't done. He smiles. Nods. Acts like he understands. And then, he doesn't leave. It starts small. A voicemail here. A text there. A flower delivery on a day that means nothing. Then she sees him parked outside her office. At the gym. In her neighborhood. Always distant. Always watching. When she confronts him, he denies it. Laughs it off. Makes her feel like she's being paranoid. And Leah, for the first time, feels unsafe in her own life. She goes to the police, but there's nothing they can do. Carter hasn't broken any laws. He hasn't threatened her. He's just present. A smile behind the curtain. A shadow behind the door. A presence in her world that refuses to let go. Her once pristine home becomes a battleground of anxiety. She changes the locks. She updates her security system. She avoids routines. But Carter always seems one step ahead. It's as if he's reading her thoughts, predicting her next move. Her friends try to help, but even they can't see what she sees. To them, Carter is just an ex who can't let go. But Leah knows better. She feels it. The illusion of safety has shattered. And beneath it is something darker. Something that used to call her beautiful. Something that used to hold her hand. Now it watches her sleep. The walls of Leah Vaughn's life are no longer hers. Her windows, once a source of calm, pouring warm light into her kitchen every morning, now feel like eyes. Her home, her routines, the things that used to feel grounded and safe have become fragile, breakable. And not just in theory. Carter has found his way inside. Not just her mind, but her physical world. He's crossed boundaries, slipped through locked doors, and smiled at her like nothing ever changed. It's not that he's lurking in shadows. It's that he's showing up with flowers, pretending everything is normal, while the truth coils tighter around her every day. Leah reports everything to the police. Every incident. Every visit. Every time Carter shows up and pretends not to. But there are no threats. No bruises. Just presence. Unwanted, unrelenting, invasive presence. The kind that doesn't register on paper. Carter, ever clever, ever composed, knows exactly how to skate just beneath the threshold of what the law considers danger. He's charming to strangers, polite to officers, calm during every encounter. And when Leah tries to explain the deeper dread, what it means to feel hunted by someone who's smiling, no one can quite see it the way she does. She begins to unravel, not from weakness but from exhaustion. Sleep eludes her. She starts checking the locks 5, 6, 7 times before bed. The security system's beeping becomes a heartbeat. Every corner of her house feels wrong, like the walls are shrinking. At work, her attention wavers. Friends pull back. They're concerned, yes, but they don't know what to say anymore. Maybe he's just having a hard time letting go, someone says. Try ignoring him, says another. But Leah knows. This isn't about heartbreak. It's about control. It's about obsession. And then things escalate.
It starts with the phone call. Static at first, then her own voice playing back to her. A recording of something she said days earlier. She freezes. The call ends. And it happens again. More recordings. Her conversations, her private moments. Someone has been listening. The sense of violation is overwhelming. She doesn't just feel watched anymore. She feels stolen. Her voice, her words, her space. All taken. All manipulated. Then her cat disappears. She finds the back door open, the lock still engaged. She calls out. Searches. Finds fur on the fence line. But the cat is gone. No note. No message. But the implication is deafening. This is the language Carter speaks now, one of erasure, of reminders. He's not angry. He's not violent. He's surgical. He wants her to feel unsafe, to unravel quietly, to have no one to turn to. That's the brilliance of his cruelty. It's not loud. It's precise. Leah knows she can't rely on the system to protect her. The restraining order is delayed. The officers are sympathetic but ineffective. Carter is too good at slipping through the cracks. So she does what she does best. She plans. She starts documenting everything, every call, every shadow, every misplaced item. She talks to her lawyer, her building's maintenance team, even her neighbors. She reinforces her home, switches her passwords, installs cameras in places no one would expect. She starts watching him. Quietly. Coldly. And somewhere inside her, something shifts. The fear doesn't disappear. It calcifies. Becomes something sharper. And then, just as things reach a boiling point, Dave returns. He'd been distant, keeping space since their breakup. But when he hears what's been happening, when he sees the effect Carter's had on her, something in him clicks back into place. He believes her. Without hesitation. And that belief, that steady reassurance, gives Leah the room to breathe again. Together, they go to the police. They press for action. But even with Dave's presence, the case remains frustratingly slow. Carter hasn't made a direct threat. The system wants proof. And Leah knows, if she waits for that, it'll be too late. The final straw comes one night when Leah returns home and finds Carter inside. He doesn't try to hide it. He stands in her living room like he belongs there. Calm. Serene. Holding a glass of water like he's been waiting for her. He talks to her like nothing is wrong. Like they're still in love. His voice is soft, but every word is a noose. Leah doesn't scream. Doesn't run. She speaks to him like she would a bomb, waiting to detonate. She keeps him calm. Slowly reaches for her phone, hidden behind the counter. She dials 911 under the counter with one hand. But he sees it. And the facade breaks. The Carter who explodes now is different than before. More calculated. More brutal. He doesn't hit her. He corners her. Speaks threats just beneath his breath. Talks about what it's like to lose everything. About how easy it is to take things from people when no one believes them. And then he leaves. Just walks out the front door. The police arrive minutes later. But he's already gone. That night, Leah doesn't sleep. The next morning, she walks into the police station and demands that something be done. She's ready to go public. Ready to bring charges. But as she leaves, she sees something in the parking lot. Carter's car, parked just far enough away to be out of reach. Just close enough to remind her that he's always one step ahead. And so, she stops waiting. She disappears. She empties her home. Shuts off her phone. Cuts herself off from the world. And in the silence, she builds her own plan. She learns Carter's routine. Follows him. Watches the man who's been watching her. She finds his vulnerabilities, his habits, his patterns, the places where his arrogance blinds him. And slowly, she sets the trap. The climax is patient. It doesn't come with screaming or sirens. It comes with precision. Leah finds a way into his world, into his new home, his sanctuary. She leaves behind breadcrumbs, little signals that she is watching him now. She plays the game he's been playing. Quiet, creeping, invasive. He begins to slip, panic creeping into his perfect posture, his calm voice cracking. And when the moment comes, when he returns home to find her waiting, the balance of power has shifted completely. He lunges. She fires. The ending isn't triumphant. It's silent, cold, necessary. Leah doesn't cry, doesn't collapse. She walks out of the house, breath steady, the world outside still and gray. And when the police arrive, when they ask her what happened, she tells them the truth. That she survived. That she ended it. And for the first time in a long time, that she's not afraid anymore. Some movies leave the screen behind long before the credits roll, crawling out of the story and into the lives of the people who created them. The Perfect Guy, 2015, is one of those movies. A psychological thriller that simmers with tension and obsession, it carved out its own place in the genre. But what many don't realize is just how curious and layered the making of this film really was. Behind the cold stares and taut silence, there was a set pulsing with unexpected moments, eerie coincidences, and strange creative decisions that deepened the atmosphere both on screen and off. It begins with the casting. Michael Ealy, the actor who stepped into the role of Carter Duncan, wasn't the obvious first choice for audiences familiar with his past roles. Known for playing charming, intelligent, often kind-hearted characters, Ealy had to completely invert his screen persona. And he did it so convincingly that some of his co-stars reportedly found it difficult to shake off Carter's energy between takes. Sanaa Lathan, who played Leah Vaughn, said in an interview that Michael's transformation was so complete, there were moments on set when she would feel genuinely unnerved, even off camera. "He's lovely in person," she laughed. "But when he looked at me in character, there was something in his eyes I didn't recognize. It was cold. So cold." And that coldness didn't just stay in Ealy's performance. The film was shot in and around Los Angeles, but the crew chose locations that were deliberately stripped of the warmth you'd expect in a Southern California setting. Leah's house, for instance, was selected not for its charm, but for its sterility. Director David M. Rosenthal wanted every room to feel slightly too clean, too symmetrical. The production team was instructed to remove plants, art, and even certain light fixtures that gave off a yellow glow. "We wanted the home to feel like a sanctuary at first," Rosenthal explained, "but one that could quickly turn into a cage." During filming, the actors were encouraged to never rehearse the most emotionally intense scenes. Rosenthal believed the tension would land more authentically if the actors weren't too comfortable. So when Leah first discovers Carter waiting inside her home, uninvited, unannounced, Sanaa had no idea exactly where Michael would be positioned or what he would say. That terror in her face? Completely real. The crew even kept certain lighting and sound cues hidden from her to heighten the feeling of disorientation. But perhaps the strangest part of the production was the energy on set itself.
More than one crew member reported electronic interference during filming. Phones would die inexplicably. Laptops would freeze. Lights would flicker in homes where no special effects had been installed. Most of it was shrugged off as coincidence. Wiring issues, battery drainage. But it added to the already tense atmosphere. A grip assistant joked once, "It's like the house knows we're filming a stalker movie and wants to help." There was also the issue with the footage. One particular day of filming had to be res-hot almost entirely because of a strange playback error. The footage, captured during a scene where Carter drives by Leah's house at night, appeared fine on the camera display but glitched heavily in the editing room. Entire frames were frozen. Faces were blurred. In one frame, both Ealy and Lathan are visible through the windshield at the same time, despite never filming the scene together. Editors dubbed the moment the ghost frame. No one could explain it, and that footage was quietly archived, never used. But strangeness didn't always equate to darkness. There were also moments of eerie humor. During one of the quieter days of shooting, a scene in which Leah sits alone in her living room, checking her security system, the lights shut off mid-take. Total blackout. The camera kept rolling for a few seconds, capturing Sanaa's genuine confusion. Then, just before the power came back on, the screen of her character's tablet flickered and displayed the word, hello. This wasn't part of the script. The crew swore no one triggered it. When they reviewed the device settings later, it was in airplane mode. The director kept the footage but never used it, believing it would be too much for a story already steeped in paranoia. The cast grew oddly superstitious after that. Michael Ealy began carrying a small coin in his pocket every day, a gift from his grandmother that he called his energy anchor. Sanaa started entering the set with a brief pause, touching the doorframe before crossing inside. It's not fear, she said. It's more like respect. Like saying, I see what this place wants to be, and I'm just passing through. Even the script had its mysteries. The original version of The Perfect Guy ended differently. In earlier drafts, Leah never kills Carter. Instead, she tricks him into turning himself in, using a complex scheme involving falsified evidence and psychological warfare. But test screenings showed that audiences needed that confrontation. They needed Leah not just to escape, but to end the cycle. So the final act was rewritten weeks before filming, adding the cold, calculated standoff that now serves as the film's climax. Sanaa had mixed feelings about the change at first. I loved the idea of Leah outsmarting him with the system, she admitted. But the new ending gave her the power back in a way that's rarely shown. She doesn't run. She doesn't beg. She finishes it. And that felt honest. One fun piece of trivia: the cat that disappears in the movie, Leah's beloved pet, was actually two separate cats, each trained for different behaviors. One was used for cuddling scenes, the other for more energetic shots. The cast nicknamed them Shadow and Chaos. Shadow often went missing between takes, hiding under furniture, refusing to come out unless coaxed with cheese. Chaos, on the other hand, would appear in scenes unprompted, once even jumping onto the set during a serious conversation between Leah and Dave. The director let the camera roll, keeping it in as a moment of levity between the tension. Off camera, the cast grew unexpectedly close. Despite the heavy themes of the film, the atmosphere between takes was filled with laughter and warmth. Morris Chestnut, who played Dave, often played mediator between Ealy and Lathan, keeping spirits high. On weekends, they'd hold informal dinners in each other's homes, using the time to decompress. But during night shoots, the energy would shift. Something about shooting in the dark made everyone quieter, said one camera assistant. The jokes would stop. Even the crew would whisper. During one particularly late shoot, a neighbor called the police, worried that the intense shouting from Leah's home was real. Officers arrived mid-scene and had to be stopped before interrupting a take. When they realized it was a film, one officer asked, "Wait, is this The Perfect Guy? My wife is obsessed with the trailer." And speaking of the trailer, it almost never happened. The first version of the film's trailer was considered too slow by studio execs. It focused heavily on mood, on the slow descent of Carter's charm into danger, but it lacked the punch they wanted. So a new version was cut with sharper edits, louder music, and fast glimpses of the more violent moments. That version became the official trailer, and went viral. Within 48 hours, it had over 1 million views. Audiences were hooked. Not because of gore, but because of the dread. The dread was the real star. It crept into every decision. How the rooms were lit, how Carter's voice would drop mid-sentence, how even the happiest scenes were framed with just a little too much empty space behind the characters. "It's not about what you see," Rosenthal said. "It's about what might be behind you." The film's reception only added to the mythos. Audiences didn't just watch The Perfect Guy. They debated it, rewatched it, obsessed over it. Some fans insisted Carter was a misunderstood romantic. Others pointed out hidden visual cues, his positioning in frames, his choice of clothing colors, that hinted at deeper symbolism. One theory claimed Carter never existed at all, that he was Leah's projection of trauma. Another fan swore they saw a shadow move in the background of a scene that had no characters. When asked about it, the editor simply smiled. "We didn't add anything. But that doesn't mean it wasn't there." In the years since, The Perfect Guy has remained a sleeper favorite, one of those films people discover late at night and can't stop thinking about. And maybe that's because it was never just a thriller. It was a story told with 1,000 small, careful choices, a mood built from light and silence, performance and space. And somewhere between the takes and the edits, between the chills and the strange little coincidences, something lingered. Something the crew never fully explained. But maybe that's the point. Maybe The Perfect Guy was always about what you don't see, about the fear that hides in plain sight, and the stories that follow you home. There's a particular kind of silence that follows certain moments in The Perfect Guy, a quiet so tight and deliberate that it presses against the skin like cold glass. That silence isn't an accident. It's a choice. And when critics and audiences alike emerged from the dim glow of this psychological thriller, that stillness followed them too. Not because the film shocked with spectacle or screamed with stylized horror, but because it crept. It stalked. It stood perfectly still and looked you in the eyes. Critically, The Perfect Guy was a movie that invited tension from more than just its storyline. It asked questions, not all of them comfortable. And the way it played with control, between characters, between gender dynamics, between image and intent, made it more than just another thriller. It made it a study, a dissected moment stretched into a feature-length film.
At the heart of the critical conversation is that shift, the pivot from charm to fear, from attraction to danger, from Carter to whatever Carter truly is. It begins early, but subtly. Critics were quick to note that the film's first act plays like a romance. The breakup between Leah and Dave is sincere, emotionally mature. No screaming matches, no grand betrayal, just a woman who knows what she wants and a man who can't quite give it. That scene alone earned praise for its restraint. The dialogue is tight, natural, grounded. It makes Leah's decision to move on not just understandable, but admirable. There's nothing reckless in her heart. She leaves because she's ready for more. And in that readiness, the film sets its first trap, not for Leah, but for us. Because then comes Carter. Ealy's performance was often singled out in critical reviews for how he handles that transition, from warmth to obsession. He doesn't lurch between emotions. He slides. He glides. One moment he's laughing with Leah's parents over dinner. The next, he's staring just a second too long. A quiet blink too slow. And in that pause, a seed is planted. It's not what Carter says. It's what he omits. What he watches. What he holds in. When Carter attacks the man at the gas station, it's jarring not because of its brutality, but because of its suddenness. That's the moment many critics cited as the film's turning point. The first time the mask slips. But even then, he reattaches it so quickly that for a heartbeat, you wonder if you imagined it. If maybe Leah is overreacting. If maybe he just had a bad day. And that's where the film strikes hardest. Because The Perfect Guy isn't just about a stalker. It's about gaslighting. It's about how easily women are told to mistrust their instincts. How often they're expected to be nice, to let things go, to not make a scene. Leah doesn't just battle Carter. She battles a system that second-guesses her fear. And this is where the film gains thematic resonance far beyond its genre. Critics in major publications noted the psychological realism in how Leah's pleas are received. Her friends who try to be supportive but ultimately don't understand, the police officers who sympathize but offer no concrete help, the laws that only act after the violence occurs. There's a particular sequence that underscores this perfectly. Leah reporting Carter to the police after repeated unwanted visits and calls. The officer listens. He takes notes. But then he says, until he actually does something, there's not much we can do. That line landed hard in critical circles, not for its dramatic punch, but because of its familiarity. It mirrored real-world frustrations. It echoed the stories of countless women whose fears were dismissed because no real crime had occurred yet. That's what made The Perfect Guy resonate on a deeper level. It wasn't about over-the-top violence. It was about the emotional violence of being disbelieved. When critics examined Leah's arc, they often praised Sanaa Lathan's controlled performance, how she resisted theatrics and instead rooted Leah in quiet strength. Her breakdowns were private. Her rage internal. Her fear showed in details. The way she checked her locks, the way she looked over her shoulder, the way she listened for sounds that weren't there. Critics called it a performance of resistance. Because Leah doesn't just survive. She adapts. But the film's third act is where critical discussion really took off. Leah's transformation from hunted to hunter flipped the narrative in a way that challenged genre norms. Instead of being saved, she saves herself. She creates her own plan, sets her own trap, and executes it without hesitation. Critics noted the coldness of that final confrontation, not because it lacked emotion, but because it was earned. Leah had been patient. She'd watched. She'd learned. And when she finally takes control, it's not cathartic violence, it's quiet justice. Some critics felt the ending was too clean, too simple. Others argued it was a fantasy, revenge played out in a system that, in reality, rarely gives women that kind of agency. But even in those critiques, there was an acknowledgement of the film's honesty in its build-up. The fear wasn't just real, it was recognizable. And then there was Carter. In reviews, Ealy's portrayal was dissected for how he deconstructed the image of the perfect man. His character was layered with contradictions, polite but possessive, affectionate but intrusive, intelligent but impulsive. What made him terrifying wasn't just that he stalked Leah. It was that he believed what he was doing was right, that he deserved her, that she had made a mistake and he was simply correcting it. It was entitlement, dressed as romance. And critics latched onto that, pointing out how the film played with the language of love to disguise abuse. Carter brings flowers. Carter says all the right things. Carter talks about forever. And for a while, he means it. But when he loses control, when Leah pulls away, his love becomes a weapon. Critics applauded how the film refused to make Carter cartoonish. Instead, it made him familiar. And that was what made him dangerous. There were also conversations about how the perfect guy fit into the larger landscape of thrillers about obsession. It followed a lineage of films like Fatal Attraction, Sleeping with the Enemy, Enough, and Obsessed. But where many of those stories leaned into melodrama, The Perfect Guy pulled back. It sat in the silences. It made the audience wait. And in doing so, it echoed a different kind of fear, not of screaming violence, but of the slow drip of dread, the kind that wears you down day by day. Critics also noted the film's unique contribution to representation. A black woman at the center of a mainstream psychological thriller, with a narrative not defined by race, but by agency. Leah's story isn't about being marginalized. It's about being underestimated. That distinction matters. Sanaa Lathan's presence brought weight and elegance to the role, and her performance was praised for showing strength without sacrificing vulnerability. Even the dynamic between Leah, Carter, and Dave added complexity. Dave, played by Chestnut, wasn't just a safe rebound. He was a reflection of what real partnership could look like. Critics pointed out how his quiet, steady energy contrasted with Carter's intensity. He didn't try to control Leah. He trusted her, believed her. And in a film about power and manipulation, that kind of support became revolutionary. But what solidified the film's impact wasn't just the performances or the writing. It was the conversations it started. Women who had experienced stalking spoke up online, saying Leah's journey felt eerily accurate. Mental health experts discussed how Carter's behavior mirrored real-life patterns of obsessive control. Law enforcement professionals debated the legal gray areas the film portrayed. It became more than just a movie. It became a mirror. And in that mirror, the audience saw things they hadn't been ready to name. That sometimes the scariest person in the room is the one smiling. That sometimes the threat isn't violence, it's invisibility. And that silence can be the loudest scream of all. In the end, The Perfect Guy didn't redefine the thriller genre. It didn't need to. What it did was remind us that evil doesn't always look evil. That danger can walk in wearing a suit, carrying flowers, whispering promises. And that survival doesn't always mean running. Sometimes it means turning around and staring the threat in the eyes.
The making of The Perfect Guy wasn't just a film production. It was an exercise in controlled tension, a carefully measured descent into obsession that mirrored the exact story it set out to tell. But behind all the sharp angles and brooding silences of the final cut, the process of creating this sleek psychological thriller was anything but sterile. It was full of surprises, subtle challenges, and a fascinating set of behind-the-scenes dynamics that gave the film its strange pulse. The kind of production that, while aiming for quiet intensity, often sparked with unexpected energy. At first glance, the film may seem straightforward in its setting and style. No elaborate effects, no vast landscapes, no otherworldly visuals. But the precision of its tone demanded something even harder to capture: psychological realism. And that meant the actors, crew, and creative team had to dig into the spaces between words, the breaths between looks, the dark corners of modern domestic life. It began with the script. Written by Alan B. McElroy, the story had been circling around studios for years before it found its way into production. The idea was deceptively simple: a successful woman, a romantic rebound, a dream that becomes a nightmare. But in a market saturated with thrillers, the pitch had to be more than just the surface. What ultimately sold the film was its focus on the slow burn. It didn't want to explode with violence early on. It wanted to wait, to build, to make audiences lean in closer before pulling the rug out. Director David M. Rosenthal came on board with a vision rooted in that restraint. He wanted clean lines, stark lighting, and pacing that flirted with stillness. But more importantly, he wanted the fear to grow quietly. That meant shooting the film with a sense of calm that belied the chaos simmering underneath the surface. Every camera movement, every set design choice, every color palette was chosen to enhance the theme of control and its eventual collapse. Production began in the summer of 2014 in Los Angeles. While many of the film's scenes take place indoors, in homes, cafes, offices, the trick was making each of those spaces feel like characters themselves. Leah's house, for example, was chosen not just for its sleek, modern architecture, but for its slightly impersonal, showroom-like quality. The production designer, Linda Senna, explained that Leah's home was meant to reflect her emotional state. Curated, elegant, but guarded. "It's beautiful," she said, "but there's something missing. Something lived in. It tells you that Leah's still holding a part of herself back." That sense of emotional architecture extended to Carter's world as well. While we see far less of his personal space, every glimpse we do get is carefully arranged. His clothes, his car, the way he moves through space, it's all polished, rehearsed. And that's the point. The production team designed Carter's apartment to feel like a showroom version of a man's life. Clean, masculine, curated. The kind of place you visit, but never sleep in. The challenge of shooting such a psychologically tight story was in the performances, and the crew knew early on that they were working with actors willing to go deep. Sanaa Lathan, cast as Leah, was already well established in the industry, known for her depth and quiet command. But this role required a kind of sustained anxiety that isn't easy to maintain over the course of a shoot. To capture it, Rosenthal often asked for takes with minimal dialogue. Scenes where Leah just exists in her space, drinking coffee, looking over her shoulder, pausing in front of a mirror. Those moments, Rosenthal said, are where the movie breathes, and where the fear lives. But while the tone on camera was heavy, the energy off camera was surprisingly light. According to several crew members, the set was often filled with laughter between takes. Sanaa, despite playing a woman under siege, had a reputation for keeping things grounded. She'd joke with the crew, check in with other actors, and often brought her dog to set, who quickly became something of a mascot for the production. "We needed that lightness," said one assistant director, "because what we were filming every day was so intense." Sanaa made sure we could all exhale. Michael Ealy, whose portrayal of Carter Duncan still chills audiences to this day, approached his role with surgical precision. Known for his typically charming, composed characters, Ealy used that image to his advantage. "I wanted people to believe in Carter at first," he explained in interviews. "He's not a monster out of the gate. He's someone we want to like. That's what makes him terrifying." To prepare, Ealy reportedly studied real-life cases of stalking and manipulation. He watched interviews, read court transcripts, and worked with a behavioral specialist to understand how obsession evolves. Not as an explosion, but as a creep. His performance on set was so immersive that even his co-stars sometimes had to remind themselves where the actor ended and the character began. "Michael would be joking with the crew 1 minute," said one grip, "and the next he'd walk on set, look straight ahead, and you could feel the air go cold." What surprised everyone, though, was how smoothly the filming progressed. There were no major accidents, no dramatic delays. But there were moments, small, strange ones, that seemed to echo the film's eerie energy. One day during a location shoot, a series of props, candles, framed photos, a table lamp, mysteriously fell over between takes. No one had touched them. The crew checked for wind, for movement, for any logical explanation. None found. Another time, while filming a sequence in Leah's home, one of the video monitors glitched during playback. For a few seconds, the footage played backward, showing Sanaa walking in reverse. The glitch never repeated. The file was never corrupted. It just happened. Even stranger was the phone incident. In one key scene, Leah receives a call from Carter that spirals into a chilling conversation. On the day of filming, the prop phone rang before the camera was rolling. It was supposed to be off. The number displayed? A private, unlisted line. When the crew answered, no one spoke. Just breathing. The phone was quickly reset, and the scene went on as planned, but it was enough to spook even the calmest of the team. "We laughed it off," said one sound tech, but no one wanted to take that phone home. Then there were the small, personal habits the cast developed to stay in character. Michael Ealy began journaling as Carter, writing daily entries in the voice of his character. These weren't scripts or backstory notes. They were thoughts. "It helped me understand how Carter justifies himself," he explained. "In his mind, he's not the villain. He's the one being betrayed." That's a scary headspace to live in for weeks. Sanaa, on the other hand, had a ritual of her own. Before filming the more emotionally taxing scenes, especially those involving confrontation or fear, she would spend 10 minutes in complete silence, standing in a corner of the set with her eyes closed. No distractions. No talking. Just breathing in the space. "Leah is constantly holding herself together," she said. "So I had to find that quiet before the storm." The editing becomes choppier. Shots jump perspectives. We're no longer watching Leah from over her shoulder. Sometimes we're watching her, as if through another's eyes. From outside windows. Through door frames. From hidden corners. The camera becomes Carter. This shift in perspective is one of the film's most unsettling cinematic choices. There's a particularly haunting moment when Leah sits in her living room at night, scanning security camera footage on her tablet. The room is quiet. She's alone. But the way the scene is shot, wide, still, with Leah dead center in the frame, suggests otherwise. And just when the silence stretches too long, just when the viewer's nerves begin to fray, there's movement. Barely noticeable. A figure passing by a window outside. No music. No sound cue. Just movement. That single shot was praised by critics as one of the film's most terrifying, not because of what happened, but because of how it happened. The offices, too, serve as cinematic devices. Leah's workplace is professional, sterile, corporate, just like her home. But once Carter begins to invade that space, it loses its neutrality. The once safe hallway where she greeted co-workers now feels like a corridor between threats. The elevators feel too slow. The glass walls too thin. And in a brilliant moment of visual metaphor, Carter appears outside her office one day. Not inside, not threatening, but just visible. Present. Smiling. Because that's the true horror the setting communicates. Carter doesn't break into her world. He walks in, slowly smiling. He blends into her clean lines. He inhabits her symmetry. He hides in her light. Even the scene locations we only glimpse, Carter's home, a quiet restaurant, a parking garage, are framed with intentional coolness. There are no warm spaces in The Perfect Guy. No cozy corners. Every room, every alley, every interior shot feels like a fishbowl. Characters are always being watched. Reflections in glass. Shadows on walls. Leah is never alone, even when she is. And that persistent tension is born not from the plot, but from the visuals. It's also worth noting how the city itself begins to close in. In the film's final third, outdoor scenes, once filled with color and motion, become sparse. Streets feel empty. Nights feel longer. Leah doesn't run through crowds. She moves alone. Past darkened buildings. Past silent shops. It's as if the world has stepped back, leaving her to face Carter in isolation. The climax of the film, set not in a dramatic location, but in another immaculate home, ties the visual language together. Leah has entered Carter's space now, and everything feels inverted. The house is darker, warmer in color, but more dangerous in tone. The lines blur. It's no longer clear whose space this is. And when the final confrontation happens, when Carter lunges and Leah fires, the chaos is sudden, loud, brutal. But the set remains calm. Nothing breaks. No fire. No flood. Just silence. Because the world doesn't erupt when women reclaim their power. It goes still. And that's the final stroke of genius in the film's visual design. It doesn't overwhelm with noise or spectacle. It isolates. It strips everything back to light and space, breath and shadow. And in doing so, it forces the viewer to feel the atmosphere, not just see it. So while The Perfect Guy may not be filled with sprawling set pieces or sweeping vistas, its settings are rich with purpose. Its cinematography doesn't shout, it whispers. Its colors don't clash, they retreat. Its light doesn't illuminate, it exposes. And in the quiet between each frame, in the angles and silences and shadows, a deeper truth lingers. Sometimes the most terrifying places are the ones that look exactly like home. Sometimes, a film holds onto more than what ends up on screen. The energy, the choices, the accidents that shaped it. The late-night conversations on set, the nervous laughter after a take, the subtle way a role begins to seep into the skin. The Perfect Guy, 2015, is a film that lives and breathes through tension, tight-lipped, calculated, intimate. But behind the camera, behind the eyes of characters like Leah and Carter, was a set filled with surprising camaraderie, creative sparks, and moments that caught even the cast off guard. The story the film tells is dark, yes, but the making of it? That was something else entirely. It began with a careful balancing act. Director David M. Rosenthal knew from the start that this wasn't just a thriller. It was a psychological walk along the knife's edge of control. Every element, from lighting to pacing to performance, had to feel like it belonged to a world where fear grew slowly under the skin. And that vision started to take shape the moment the cast stepped onto set. Sanaa Lathan, the center of the film's emotional gravity, brought more than performance to the table. She brought presence. Leah Vaughn is a character who must hold herself together even as her world unravels, and Sanaa embodied that with grace. Crew members often spoke of her calm energy between takes, her ability to switch between emotional depths and genuine warmth at a moment's notice. She was the glue, one grip said. When things got intense, which they did, she was always grounded. Always aware. One such moment came during the filming of a particularly draining scene. The one where Leah finds Carter waiting for her inside her house, his voice quiet, his presence overwhelming. Sanaa, shooting the scene for the third time late at night, sat silently on the floor between takes, not speaking, not fidgeting. Just breathing. Everyone respected the silence. Even Ealy, who by then had gotten deep into his role as Carter Duncan, remained off to the side, his energy coiled but still. And when the camera rolled again, it captured something real. An emotional weariness in Sanaa's eyes that didn't need to be performed. Michael's transformation into Carter was one of the more fascinating behind-the-scenes arcs. Known to most for his charm and likability, stepping into the skin of a man so controlled, yet so volatile demanded something different. To stay in character, Michael would often isolate himself between scenes, walking through set corridors alone, speaking softly to himself as Carter. But off-camera, he was the opposite. Kind, thoughtful, quick to laugh. Though cast and crew alike admitted there was always a flicker of unpredictability to him during the shoot. It was like he had two gears, said Rosenthal. Michael could charm a room in seconds, and then, on a dime, become the kind of person you'd cross the street to avoid. One of the most talked-about moments on set came from an improvised action during a rehearsal. There's a scene where Carter leans in close to Leah during an argument, not shouting, not threatening, just present. Intense. During one take, unplanned, Michael leaned so close that Sanaa instinctively flinched. Not out of fear, but reflex. That single gesture was so authentic, so rooted in the reality of the moment, that Rosenthal immediately called for a camera to capture it from multiple angles. That natural tension, the way trust can slip, the way fear lives just beneath the surface, became a defining image of their dynamic. But it wasn't all intensity. Morris Chestnut, who played Dave, the ex-boyfriend turned quiet hero, had his own insights. His role wasn't flashy, but it was essential. Dave's return in the second half of the film is one of its turning points. He brings balance, credibility, a sense of trust. My job, Chestnut said, was to remind the audience what healthy love looks like, even when it's imperfect. Especially then. But for all the darkness in the script, the final days of filming were filled with warmth. On the last day of production, the cast and crew gathered at the central filming location, Leah's home, for a final toast. The mood was soft. Tired smiles. Long hugs. Someone played music on a Bluetooth speaker. Someone else brought cupcakes shaped like cell phones, complete with fondant texts reading, "I miss you." "And where are you?" Even the crew laughed. "We survived Carter," someone said. "Now let's never date again." In the end, The Perfect Guy was more than just a psychological thriller. It was a film forged in the space between silence and sound, between smile and stare. And the process of bringing it to life demanded more than just camera setups and script notes. It demanded attention to nuance, to tension, to the way fear lingers in a quiet room. It demanded precision. And the people who made it, actors, directors, designers, every hand behind every frame, they delivered that precision. Even when the lights flickered for no reason. Even when the phone rang without a caller. Even when the tension on set felt just a little too real. Because sometimes, the best stories aren't just acted. They're felt. They're breathed. And in rare moments, they blur the line between fiction and something else. There's a certain clinical beauty to the world of The Perfect Guy. A polished, glinting surface under which something raw and unpredictable lurks. You feel it the moment the camera glides over the glass and concrete of Leah Vaughn's life. The lines are straight, the light is soft, the colors whisper rather than shout. But there's a tension in all that stillness. A quiet edge to the order. Because here, in this world of architectural balance and curated elegance, control is everything. And control is about to break. From the beginning, the film's setting is deceptively serene. Los Angeles serves as the story's canvas, but not the sun-drenched version so often seen in movies. There's no golden glow, no casual beach breeze drifting through scenes. Instead, we move through a version of LA that feels curated, much like the lives of the characters themselves. The homes are sleek, minimalist, shadowed with design. Spaces where even the imperfections feel intentional. And while the story could have unfolded anywhere, choosing this version of LA tells us something immediately. This is a story about appearances. Leah's home is our first window into this. It's spacious but not sprawling, a modern structure tucked neatly into an upscale neighborhood. White walls, sharp edges, glass windows that stretch wide enough to frame not just the view outside, but the life inside. It's the kind of place that's both inviting and intimidating, not because it's cold, but because it's untouchable. There's no clutter, no mess. Every piece of furniture has its place. Every line is clean. This is Leah's sanctuary, but it's also her fortress, her mirror. The production design leaned heavily into this duality. The interior of her home was dressed with a cool color palette, muted grays, soft beiges, and rich blues that suggest calm. But under that calm lies something sterile, something that begins to hum with unease the moment Carter enters the space. His presence doesn't disturb the physical order. He doesn't break things or cause messes, but his energy displaces something intangible. And the film captures that through subtle changes. The lighting shifts. The camera lingers. Rooms that once felt warm now feel watched. And it's not just Leah's house that shifts in tone. It's every space she inhabits. Carter's introduction brings with it a sense of transformation. At first, everything grows brighter. Their early dates are filmed in soft focus, bathed in warm light and golden hour sun. Cafes feel romantic. Parks seem peaceful. Even Leah's office, previously rigid and professional, pulses with something lighter. These scenes mirror her emotional state, opening up, hoping again, allowing herself to lean into something new. But that light doesn't last. As Carter's darker nature begins to emerge, the film's settings tighten. Even when the locations remain the same, they change. Suddenly, Leah's house feels too open. The large windows become vulnerabilities. The absence of blinds becomes a source of tension. You can see in. Anyone can. The pristine kitchen feels exposed. The silence of the living room feels hollow. The spaces that once belonged to her no longer feel like hers at all. The cinematography reflects this descent beautifully. Cinematographer Peter Simonite used a visual language that begins expansive and soft, then slowly compresses and hardens. Early on, the camera floats. It breathes. Scenes are shot with wide lenses, giving Leah space, physically and emotionally. But as the film progresses, those shots close in. The framing tightens. The walls feel closer. The ceilings feel lower. The world shrinks around her, just as her autonomy does. And that's the key. The cinematography feels the threat before we see it. In scenes where Carter is present, even when he's not speaking, the camera reacts to him. It tilts ever so slightly. It lingers in his direction. There's a quiet shift in focus, a subtle tracking of his movements that makes the audience feel what Leah feels. That she's not alone, that something is always just behind her, watching. Lighting plays an equally crucial role throughout the film. Lighting transitions from natural and soft to stark and directional. The warmth of daylight scenes fades into the cold, dim glow of night interiors. Shadows grow longer. Corners grow darker. The film doesn't rely on overt darkness to create fear. It relies on incomplete light. Scenes are often bathed in just enough illumination to see part of the frame, leaving the rest to the imagination. A hallway half-lit. A stairwell dipped in shadow. A bedroom lit only by the flicker of a street lamp outside. This use of partial light is deliberate. It speaks to the film's core theme, partial knowledge. Leah doesn't know who Carter really is. She knows fragments. And the audience, too, is kept in partial shadow, only ever given pieces of the threat until the final, terrifying moments. Sound, though invisible, becomes part of the setting too. The film uses silence like a scalpel. Background noise is minimized. Ambient sound is trimmed. And when sound does enter, whether it's Carter's voice, a door creaking open, or a phone vibrating on a wooden table, it matters. Every noise feels sharper in the quiet. Every footstep, every breath, feels like a signal. Leah's home at night becomes a chamber of amplified tension, where even the hum of the refrigerator feels intrusive. And when Leah begins to suspect Carter is watching her, when she finds the voicemail with her own recorded voice, when she notices things moved in her house, the film leans into that paranoia with spatial choices. The editing becomes choppier. Shots jump perspectives. We're no longer watching Leah from over her shoulder. Sometimes we're watching her, as if through another's eyes. From outside windows. Through door frames. From hidden corners. Lighting plays just as crucial a role in building tension. The film's lighting design shifts, almost imperceptibly over time. Early scenes are bright, filled with daylight, warm and natural. Leah's home glows with early morning sunlight streaming through clean windows. Her office is lit with soft fluorescence, her favorite cafe with ambient golden tones. But as the story darkens, so does the light. Gradually, warmth gives way to coolness. Scenes are lit more with blues and greys. The shadows grow longer. Whole scenes are bathed in a kind of twilight that never seems to lift. At night, the lighting becomes especially eerie. Leah's home, full of glass and open spaces, turns into a box of reflections. Streetlights glow just out of reach, illuminating outlines but not details. The effect is simple but terrifying. You can see just enough to know that you can't see everything. Darkness becomes a character in its own right, always suggesting something more than what's shown. The use of sound in The Perfect Guy is masterful in its restraint. There are no heavy-handed musical cues, no thunderous strings to tell you when to jump. Instead, composer Ealy created a score built on minimalism. Low drones, soft pulses, textures that sit beneath the dialogue rather than rising above it. The music rarely demands attention. It exists to underline dread, not distract from it. In one scene, Leah walks through her house, slowly realizing something is off. The music doesn't swell. Instead, the soundscape builds with tiny, almost imperceptible details. The click of her heels on hardwood, the faint rustle of leaves outside, the hum of an appliance that suddenly stops. The silence becomes louder than sound. And in that silence, the fear creeps in. It's a technique borrowed from classic thrillers, not overwhelming the viewer with noise, but inviting them to participate in the fear. By giving us space to listen, the film also gives us space to imagine. And that, as any seasoned filmmaker knows, is where the real terror lives. Editing, too, becomes a silent player in this psychological chess match. Editor Joan Sobel, known for her precise, rhythmic cutting, crafted a pace that mirrors Leah's mental state. In the beginning, the cuts are longer, letting conversations breathe. The tension grows slowly, like a heat rising beneath a closed door. But as Carter's grip tightens, the cuts become more jarring, more invasive. Conversations are interrupted. Scenes cut away just before we expect. And moments linger, particularly those where Leah is alone, just a beat too long. This off-balance rhythm keeps the viewer unsettled. We're trained to expect a certain cadence in thrillers. Set up, jump, release. But The Perfect Guy often denies that rhythm. It builds and builds, and then lets the pressure hang. There's a scene where Leah walks past a darkened hallway. The camera stays wide. She doesn't stop. Nothing happens. But we're waiting. And waiting. And that wait becomes the moment. Perhaps the most telling use of editing comes in the film's second half, as Leah starts to lose her sense of safety. Quick flashes of Carter, outside her office, driving by her street, standing in a crowd, are edited like echoes. Sometimes they're real, sometimes imagined. The line blurs. Leah's paranoia becomes ours. The edit itself begins to lie. Production design also played an essential role in the film's visual storytelling. Every location was selected not just for aesthetic value, but for emotional resonance. Leah's home was dressed in a palette of greys, creams, and subtle blues. It was elegant, yes, but also emotionally restrained. Her kitchen gleamed, her living room was filled with clean lines, her bedroom was immaculate. But as Carter's presence deepened, that space became less comforting. The openness of her home turned into exposure. And the production team made small changes throughout the shoot, moving furniture, altering props, changing the color temperature of the lights, to reflect that shift. Carter's spaces, by contrast, were colder from the start. Sparse, masculine, almost sterile. His apartment lacked warmth, lacked detail. It was a space that revealed nothing. Just like him. And that emptiness became unsettling in its own right. It said, there is nothing here to understand. Together, all of these choices created a cinematic mood that felt inescapable. The perfect guy wasn't loud or frenetic. It didn't want to startle. It wanted to linger, to crawl. And that creeping sense of dread, that feeling of being watched and doubted and cornered, was the result of carefully orchestrated craft. It was a film that trusted the intelligence of its audience, that gave us just enough light to see, just enough silence to listen, and just enough time to doubt what we thought we knew. And the gamble paid off. At the box office, The Perfect Guy overperformed in a big way. Released in September 2015, the film opened at number 1, earning over $25 million in its first weekend, surpassing expectations and beating out larger studio films. With a production budget of around $12 million, it more than doubled its cost within days, eventually grossing over $60 million worldwide. The commercial success was attributed not just to the film's cast, which included major stars like Sanaa Lathan, Ealy, and Chestnut, but to its marketing strategy. The trailers leaned heavily into the romance gone wrong angle, drawing in a wide audience that spanned thriller lovers, romance fans, and viewers looking for something grounded in emotional realism. The title itself, The Perfect Guy, sparked curiosity and debate, both in marketing circles and among viewers. Was he perfect? Or was perfection the mask? But beyond dollars and viewership, the film's true legacy lives in its tone. It didn't need gore. It didn't need explosions. It needed quiet. It needed a slow camera pan across a kitchen counter. It needed a phone ringing in an empty room. It needed the sound of a heartbeat beneath still water. That's what makes The Perfect Guy a masterclass in restraint. Every filmmaking decision, from the way a scene was blocked to the way light touched Leah's face, was in service of something quieter, deeper, more psychological. It was about making the viewer feel like they were the ones being watched. And in the end, that's what great thrillers do. They don't just scare you. They stay with you. In your hallway. In your rearview mirror. In the silence of a perfectly ordinary night. When the phone rings, and you hesitate to answer. There's a certain chemistry that doesn't live in dialogue or direction. It exists in the space between glances, in the silence between two characters when nothing is said, but everything is understood. In The Perfect Guy, 2015, that tension pulses through every scene like a low hum beneath the surface. But what audiences might not realize is how much of that electricity, that friction, that believability, came from the people behind the characters. Actors who leaned into their roles with eerie dedication, and interviews that revealed just how close fiction came to touching something personal. Between takes, the set was surprisingly light. Chestnut, who played Dave, was often the levity the production needed. With his easygoing nature and years of experience, Morris became something of a big brother figure on set, especially during long night shoots. One particularly grueling night, with everyone growing tired and the mood heavy, Morris pulled out a Bluetooth speaker and started playing 90s R&B in the kitchen of Leah's house. Suddenly, cast and crew alike were dancing, laughing, even Sanaa spinning barefoot on the hardwood floor. It was the reset they didn't know they needed. The crew, too, became a tight unit. Shooting a film like The Perfect Guy means spending a lot of time in confined spaces, bedrooms, living rooms, office cubicles, and everyone has to move like clockwork. The camera team developed hand signals to communicate during takes, often operating with just inches of space between them and the actors. And the sound department, tasked with capturing whisper-quiet dialogue and subtle shifts in breath, became so attuned to the environment that they could tell when someone was about to speak before they did. There were challenges, of course. One of the biggest came during a crucial night scene, where Leah realizes she's being watched through her window. The plan was to shoot it using only the ambient street lighting outside, relying on natural shadows to paint the tension. But LA nights are unpredictable. A neighborhood power outage during filming delayed the scene for hours. The generators hummed, the crew waited, and when the lights finally returned, something strange happened. As the cameras rolled, a light outside the window, one not rigged by the crew, began to flicker rhythmically. At first, they assumed it was a fault. But upon checking, no one could identify the source. The bulb wasn't connected to any of their systems. It had apparently just started blinking. Some shrugged it off. Others, already creeped out by the content of the scene, stayed uncomfortably quiet. The light was eventually covered, but the flicker lingered in memory. Then there was the cat. Leah's pet, a small and expressive tabby, became something of a diva on set. Named Ginger in the script, the cat used in filming was actually two different animals, both trained to respond to cues. One was better at sitting still. The other was used for motion, but neither liked to cooperate at night. During one particular shoot, as the camera rolled, the still cat jumped down mid-take and refused to be coaxed back. Sanaa, staying in character, improvised her reaction, and the crew loved it so much that the footage stayed. The unpredictability of animals had suddenly made Leah feel more human. And then came the confrontation scene, the climax of the film. Shot over 2 long nights in a remote location that doubled as Carter's house, the tension on set was palpable. Everyone knew this was the moment the film had been building toward. Leah had turned from hunted to hunter. Carter, confident until the end, was about to be caught off guard. Sanaa and Michael rehearsed the scene only once. They didn't want to dilute the energy. When the cameras rolled, there was no background noise. No whispered chatter on comms. Just silence. As Michael approached, as Leah's voice cut through the still air, you could feel the moment stretch. The sound of a single footstep. A breath. And then the shot. The final reversal. The crew didn't clap after the take. They just stood there. Some swallowed hard. Others nodded slowly. It wasn't applause. It was reverence. Even post-production carried some echoes of this charged environment. Editor Joan Sobel worked with Rosenthal to maintain the film's tension through rhythm. They discovered that shortening certain shots actually lessened the fear. So they let the silences breathe. They let Sanaa's stillness carry weight. And they worked closely with composer Ealy or Vaughn to layer in soundscapes that were less about music and more about movement. A distant hum. A low tremble. A soft, slow throb of unease. And through it all, the team never lost sight of what kind of story they were telling. A story about fear, not the kind that jumps out from shadows, but the kind that waits in the open. That smiles. That knocks on your door. As the wrap party rolled around, quiet, intimate, more reflective than celebratory, the cast and crew gathered in the living room of the now-empty house that had once been Leah's world. They shared stories. They laughed at the cat's stubbornness. Someone played back footage from a blooper reel. And then Sanaa stood up, looked around, and raised a glass. "To the things we survived," she said. On camera and off. They toasted. Because the perfect guy had done more than tell a story. It had left an imprint. In the air. In the rooms. And in the quiet glances shared by those who, for a few intense weeks, had turned fiction into something terrifyingly real. From the moment The Perfect Guy, 2015, begins, there's a hum beneath the surface. A sense that something is about to slip out of place. The air is too still. The smiles too practiced. The pauses between words just a second too long. And that hum, that subtle vibration of unease, wasn't just found in the performances or the plot. It was built layer by layer through the film's precise, calculated filmmaking techniques. Director David M. Rosenthal didn't aim for loud or flashy. He aimed for slow-burn tension, for restraint that made the audience lean in instead of pulling back. And every tool in his cinematic kit, camera work, sound design, editing, lighting, was used like a scalpel to carve out that atmosphere. The visual language of the film is the first thing that quietly gets under your skin. Cinematographer Peter Simonite worked alongside Rosenthal to design a look that was both polished and eerily pristine. The world we step into is not messy. It's composed, ordered. Spaces are open, modern, controlled. And that's the trick. The audience is immediately placed into a visual space that mimics Leah's own sense of security. Everything is in its right place. The lines are clean. The light is soft. But that perfection soon starts to feel like a cage. The camera tells us this story long before the characters do. In the early scenes, particularly those between Leah and Dave, wide shots dominate. There's room to breathe. Their interactions, though fraught with emotional tension, are framed with openness. It suggests possibility, future choice. But the moment Carter enters Leah's world, the frame begins to constrict. The shots get tighter. Backgrounds begin to blur. Doors, windows, glass reflections, these elements move closer, crowding the frame. It's subtle at first, but unmistakable. What once felt expansive now feels watched. Leah, visually, begins to lose space. This shrinking frame becomes one of the film's most effective visual metaphors. It mirrors her shrinking world. The walls close in. Her home, once a sanctuary, begins to feel like a stage where someone else is calling the cues. And the camera becomes complicit in that feeling. It doesn't move chaotically. It's steady, deliberate, almost too calm, like Carter himself. When the camera does move, it glides behind corners, peeks through windows, tracks from across the street. These voyeuristic choices place the audience not beside Leah, but behind her, watching her, studying her. And whether you know it or not, you're seeing the world the way Carter does. The breakup doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with silence. A resignation that neither of them wants to voice, but both feel pressing in. One night, over dinner, Leah brings up the idea of a future again, and Dave, gentle, loving, and not ready, tells her what she already knows. He's not there. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The moment is soft, painful, honest. And by the time Leah is alone again in her spotless house, it's clear that this isn't just the end of a relationship. It's the beginning of an emotional unraveling she hadn't prepared for. But Leah is nothing if not composed. She throws herself back into work, into routine, into long runs and empty nights. And for a while that's enough. She convinces herself she's fine. That she can wait for love to find her again in the way it's meant to. No more guessing. No more settling. Just patience. But fate has other plans, and it arrives in the form of Carter Duncan. Their meeting is a spark. It happens at a coffee shop, casual and unassuming. Carter is confident, charming without being pushy. He has the kind of energy that makes the air feel warmer around him, the kind of smile that lingers after he's walked away. Their conversation is playful but anchored, and before Leah even realizes it, she's saying yes to dinner. What's the harm in one date? But one date becomes 2, then 3, then 5, and suddenly, Leah is laughing again. Carter moves quickly, but not recklessly. He sends flowers. He opens doors. He learns her rhythms. There's something intoxicating about how seen Leah feels with him. After years of navigating a relationship that felt like a waiting room, Carter's energy feels like movement. Momentum. He meets her friends and wins them over. He meets her parents and charms them with ease. He says the things she thought men didn't say anymore. That he wants something real. That he's looking for forever. And Leah, guarded, cautious, but aching for something solid, starts to let herself believe. They share passionate nights and slow, intimate mornings. She introduces him to the most sacred spaces in her life. Her home, her fears, her hopes for the future. He listens. He holds her. He says he'll never let her go. And for a moment, it's everything. But then, something changes. It's subtle, like a shift in the weather. A car ride. A glance. A stranger in a gas station asking Leah a question. Innocent enough. Carter sees it differently. His demeanor shifts. The air in the car thickens. And just like that, the charm cracks. He erupts. Not with words, but with violence. A man is dragged from his car. Fists fly. Leah watches, frozen, as the man she trusted to keep her safe becomes a storm she can't stop. The ride home is silent. Carter's apologies come quick and clean. I lost it. He was disrespectful. That's not who I am. He holds her hand. He looks sorry. But something in Leah's chest curls into itself. That image, the rage, the suddenness, it doesn't leave her. She tries to make sense of it. Tries to forgive. But the unease follows her like a second shadow. The perfect man she thought she found now feels unfamiliar. Dangerous. So she ends it. Clearly. Kindly. But firmly. She tells Carter that they're done. That what she saw can't be unseen. But Carter isn't done. He smiles. Nods. Acts like he understands. And then, he doesn't leave. It starts small. A voicemail here. A text there. A flower delivery on a day that means nothing. Then she sees him parked outside her office. At the gym. In her neighborhood. Always distant. Always watching. When she confronts him, he denies it. Laughs it off. Makes her feel like she's being paranoid. And Leah, for the first time, feels unsafe in her own life. She goes to the police, but there's nothing they can do. Carter hasn't broken any laws. He hasn't threatened her. He's just present. A smile behind the curtain. A shadow behind the door. A presence in her world that refuses to let go. Her once pristine home becomes a battleground of anxiety. She changes the locks. She updates her security system. She avoids routines. But Carter always seems one step ahead. It's as if he's reading her thoughts, predicting her next move. Her friends try to help, but even they can't see what she sees. To them, Carter is just an ex who can't let go. But Leah knows better. She feels it. The illusion of safety has shattered. And beneath it is something darker. Something that used to call her beautiful. Something that used to hold her hand. Now it watches her sleep. The walls of Leah Vaughn's life are no longer hers. Her windows, once a source of calm, pouring warm light into her kitchen every morning, now feel like eyes. Her home, her routines, the things that used to feel grounded and safe have become fragile, breakable. And not just in theory. Carter has found his way inside. Not just her mind, but her physical world. He's crossed boundaries, slipped through locked doors, and smiled at her like nothing ever changed. It's not that he's lurking in shadows. It's that he's showing up with flowers, pretending everything is normal, while the truth coils tighter around her every day. Leah reports everything to the police. Every incident. Every visit. Every time Carter shows up and pretends not to. But there are no threats. No bruises. Just presence. Unwanted, unrelenting, invasive presence. The kind that doesn't register on paper. Carter, ever clever, ever composed, knows exactly how to skate just beneath the threshold of what the law considers danger. He's charming to strangers, polite to officers, calm during every encounter. And when Leah tries to explain the deeper dread, what it means to feel hunted by someone who's smiling, no one can quite see it the way she does. She begins to unravel, not from weakness but from exhaustion. Sleep eludes her. She starts checking the locks 5, 6, 7 times before bed. The security system's beeping becomes a heartbeat. Every corner of her house feels wrong, like the walls are shrinking. At work, her attention wavers. Friends pull back. They're concerned, yes, but they don't know what to say anymore. Maybe he's just having a hard time letting go, someone says. Try ignoring him, says another. But Leah knows. This isn't about heartbreak. It's about control. It's about obsession. And then things escalate. It all began with a cast that didn't just understand the story. They embodied it. Sanaa Lathan, already a force in Hollywood, stepped into the role of Leah Vaughn with an elegance that wasn't about glamour, but about presence. She brought a gravity to the film's emotional core. A woman who didn't need saving, only space to fight her own battle. When asked what drew her to the project, Sanaa said, "I was fascinated by how quietly strong Leah is. We're used to seeing women in thrillers scream and run. Leah doesn't scream. She calculates. She rebuilds herself piece by piece. That felt real to me. And maybe that's why her performance landed with such clarity. Audiences didn't just watch Leah. They recognized her. The friend who got out of a bad relationship, but still flinches when her phone rings. The co-worker who closes her office door when she sees her ex outside. The woman who smiles politely at dinner, but never sits with her back to the window. Sanaa gave Leah the kind of internal world that made viewers lean forward, as if listening for something unspoken. Opposite her, Ealy crafted a portrayal of Carter Duncan that was both magnetic and monstrous. Soft-spoken, articulate, effortlessly charming, he made Carter's descent into obsession feel disturbingly believable. "I didn't want to play him like a villain," Michael said in interviews. "I wanted to play him like someone who genuinely believes he's in the right. That's what makes him scary. He doesn't think he's hurting anyone. He thinks he's fixing something." That conviction, smooth, calm, unwavering, was what chilled viewers the most. Carter wasn't a screaming maniac or a masked figure in the shadows. He was a man in a tailored suit who smiled when he spoke, who brought flowers, who opened doors. And Ealy, with those piercing eyes and composed demeanor, weaponized charm like no other. During interviews, even his castmates admitted it was hard to separate the actor from the role. "Michael is the sweetest guy," Sanaa said with a laugh. "But when he locked eyes with you as Carter, you felt it in your bones." And then there was Morris Chestnut. Playing Dave, Leah's ex-boyfriend and the stable, quiet contrast to Carter's storm, Morris brought a groundedness to the film that audiences embraced wholeheartedly. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't intense. But he was present. And that presence offered something rare in thrillers. A man who believes a woman without needing proof. Dave wasn't there to save Leah, Morris explained. He was there to listen. To remind her that not every man is trying to control the story. Their chemistry, Sanaa and Morris, was gentler than what she shared with Carter. It was quieter. But it was also what made the film's emotional stakes feel so real. Viewers didn't just want Leah to survive Carter. They wanted her to find something stable again, something soft to lean on. And Dave, played with warmth and quiet intelligence, became that symbol of hope. Off camera, the three leads formed a surprising bond. Interviews revealed a set atmosphere that, while steeped in dark material, was filled with laughter and trust. We had to create a safe space, Sanaa said, because some of these scenes were emotionally intense. You can't go there with someone unless you know they've got your back. Michael echoed that. There were days where we'd shoot a confrontation scene, and then immediately after, we'd be at the craft table cracking jokes. That trust is what allowed us to go deeper. Behind the scenes, their camaraderie translated into performances that never felt forced. The emotional weight never tipped into melodrama. Even in the most volatile moments, when Leah discovers Carter has broken into her home, when Carter stares her down with that calm menace, there's a restraint that speaks to the discipline and respect the actors brought to their roles. And audiences noticed. When the film premiered, it struck a nerve. On opening weekend, theaters filled with people who came expecting a thriller, but left talking about something else entirely. About fear that lives in plain sight. About the performance that made them hold their breath. About how real it felt. Online, reviews poured in. I thought I was going to watch a movie about a crazy ex, one viewer wrote. What I saw was a movie about how quickly charm turns into danger. I saw someone I dated in Carter. Another posted, Leah reminded me of my sister. The way she kept it together. The way people doubted her. This film hit harder than I expected. Twitter lit up with praise for Sanaa's performance. Her quiet breakdowns. Her strength. Her stillness. One user wrote, "We don't talk enough about how powerful it is to see a black woman in a thriller not fall apart. She faced it. She outsmarted it. That's the energy." Michael Ealy's portrayal also drew widespread attention. Some fans said they couldn't look at him the same way afterward. An ironic testament to how convincingly he embodied Carter. "I used to have a crush on him," one tweet joked. "Now I'm locking my doors." But beyond the laughter, there was a deeper conversation unfolding. Women began sharing stories. About exes who wouldn't let go, about moments where they were told they were overreacting, about the fear of not being believed. The film had touched something raw. It had peeled back the layers of what a perfect guy really means, and revealed the dangers hidden in the shadows of romantic idealism. Critics, too, weighed in. The performances were praised, especially the trio at the center. Reviews called the film a quietly unsettling descent into obsession, a thriller that lives in the eyes more than in the action, and a cautionary tale masked in a love story. But it was the audience response that turned The Perfect Guy into something more than just a film. It became a conversation. At Q&A screenings, women stood up to say, "Thank you for showing this." At press events, journalists leaned in closer when Sanaa talked about what it meant to play Leah. "She's not a victim," she said. "She's a mirror. For every woman who's been followed. For every woman who's been told to calm down. For every woman who knew something was wrong, and was right." In interviews after the film's release, all three leads reflected on the film's unexpected impact. Michael Ealy, perhaps most haunted by the role, spoke openly about what he learned. "Playing Carter made me think hard about perception. About how society romanticizes persistence. We say, he just won't give up. But sometimes that's not love. That's possession." Morris Chestnut reflected on the importance of Dave's character. "We don't see enough examples of emotional maturity in men on screen. Dave wasn't the hero because he rescued Leah. He was the hero because he respected her. And Sanaa, whose performance remains one of the most resonant in her career, said it best. This was never just a thriller. This was a story about power. About belief. About what happens when a woman refuses to be silent." Years after its release, The Perfect Guy still finds new audiences. It still sparks debate. Still causes double takes at old flames and suspicious glances at charming strangers. And the reason it lasts isn't just because of its story. It's because of the people who told it. The actors who gave breath to its fear. The viewers who saw pieces of themselves on screen. In the quiet aftermath of a movie like this, what remains are the echoes. Of performances that felt too real. Of interviews that peeled back the curtain.